Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I call this meeting to order. It's meeting number 154 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Yes, I'll get you in 2 seconds, Mr. Brock. Just very quickly, a gentle reminder, please keep your earpieces away from your microphones at all times so we can protect the hearing of our very valued interpreters. Also, do not touch your microphone at all. Mr. Brock, go ahead quickly.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to remind all colleagues that during the last appearance of Tom Clark at this committee, he indicated that he'd be willing to be put under oath to reiterate his talking points. With that being said, I'd be seeking unanimous consent from all committee members that Mr. Clark, prior to his opening statement, be given the opportunity to either swear to tell the truth or affirm to tell the truth, Mr. Chair.
We're fine with that. Mr. Clark, I understand you have the text. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Hello, Mr. Clark. Would you like to perform an oath or solemn affirmation, sir?
Affirmation, please.
Okay, so please repeat after me. I, Tom Clark, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly affirm.
I, Tom Clark, do solemnly and sincerely affirm
and declare the taking of any oath is according to my religious belief unlawful.
And declare the taking of any oath according to my religious belief unlawful.
And I do also solemnly, sincerely, and truly affirm.
And I do also solemnly, sincerely, and truly affirm.
And declare that the evidence I shall give on this examination.
And declare that the evidence I shall give on this examination.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Welcome back. We'll start with a 5-minute statement from yourself. Go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here in support of the committee's important work to ensure the full accountability and transparency of government operations, including those of Global Affairs Canada. Today, I will speak to my role as Consul General to New York and clarify any remaining questions you may have. As Consul General, I am mandated to advocate for Canada's interests in the 5-state territory of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Connecticut. This region has a combined GDP of more than $6 trillion and two-way trade with Canada of more than $200 billion a year. The consulate is one of Canada's most important missions in the United States and in Canada's global network abroad. Une résidence officielle est l'un des éléments.
An official residence is one component of the diplomatic toolkit used by countries around the world. For the New York consulate, events hosted at the official residence foster partnerships between American business and political leadership and Canadian federal, provincial, and business leaders. With the world focused on the changing administration in the United States, these relationships and the economic opportunities they generate are more important than ever. Upon my arrival at the consulate in February 2023, I began hosting events in the official residence to build these networks and create opportunities to advance the political and economic interests of Canadians. As we have learned, Canada's official residence in New York was purchased in 1961 and last renovated in 1982, more than 40 years ago. While hosting events at the official residence to advance Canada's interests, I observed that the property could not appropriately accommodate guests with mobility issues and posed challenges between the family and representational space. I was informed that these concerns were in line with deficiencies reported to Global Affairs Canada headquarters since 2014.
In my testimony, I did not provide input to the headquarters-led multi-year process to address the deficiencies of the official residence. With respect to previous questions from the committee regarding a report prepared by the department's Property Bureau in April of 2023, I want to be clear that I was unaware that any mention of my observations had been included as part of the mission's input to the property team. Any mention from the mission referencing my views on the state of the official residence were the result of an indirect, third-hand report of a remark made to a colleague. This in no way constituted an effort to influence a complex departmental process initiated in 2014, that is, 8 years prior to my arrival. As all officials who have come before this committee have stated, the property project for the official residence was led by Global Affairs Canada headquarters. The decision to relocate the residence was taken in Ottawa, based on a detailed financial analysis and needs assessment overseen by a governance structure designed to prevent against any undue influence. As with all departmental property decisions, this process followed a strict set of guidelines and requirements designed to ensure that decisions are based on value for money and long-term benefits for Canadians. As we have heard, Canada's new official residence is smaller, it's cheaper, and it's accessible. In closing, I did not seek, nor have the opportunity, to exert influence or direct the department's ongoing consideration of the residence, nor did I exert any influence or direction on the purchase of the new residence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We will start with Mr. Barrett, but please, I'm going to remind everyone, because we have short time with Mr. Clark today, to please watch your clocks so we do not go over time. Mr. Barrett, the floor is yours for 6 minutes, please.
On November 5th, news broke about your involvement in the purchase of the $9 million condo on Billionaires Row. And then, having been found out, you sent a letter, and the letter said, I was not aware until media reports this week that the comments made in passing to a colleague had been reported by the Consulate General to the Global Affairs Canada property team. Let me give you an example of a comment made in passing, Mr. Clark. Hey, that meeting didn't go so well. Now, let me give you an example of someone who holds the most senior position at an organization telling their team that the facilities for them to live in and for them to work in were insufficient. And that's what you did, sir. Isn't that right?
Mr. Chair, as previous testimony has shown, the concerns about the official residence, let's call it the old official residence, have been around since 2014. I was
be there, Mr. Clark. The difference, sir, is that you got the job and then the condo got bought. That's the difference. This isn't about what happened 8 years ago. What we need to know, sir, is why you didn't tell the truth. Sir, why you lied to committee the last time you were here. Why did you do that?
Mr. Chair, the evidence that I have given this committee has been consistent with the evidence that every other witness has given to this committee. It is straightforward and it is simple.
That's not true. And let me display for you some of the evidence that comes from your own department. First of all, there's the ATIP that was the subject of that November 5th story that was published. And in it, it says, the current CNGNYHOM, that's you, expressed concerns regarding the completion of the kitchen and refurbishment project and indicated the unit was not suitable to be the Consul General's accommodations, and it does not have an ideal floor plan for the Consul General representational activities. That's not what you said when you were here last time. And you were asked pointedly. And, you know, the one of the Liberal members helpfully asked, did you at any time talk to anyone regarding a desire for relocation? Mr. Thomas Clark, quote, never. Well, now we know that's not true. We know, in fact, that you did make the comments. And you just didn't know that it was captured in official briefing notes. So you just didn't know that you knew that you made the comments, you just didn't know you got caught. Isn't that right?
Mr. Chair, as every other witness has testified, and as I have testified, this process has been going on for a long time. As I testified to this committee, I did not ask for or request a change of residence. I will restate that now. But this has been a process that has been led by Global Affairs Headquarters Proper Division in Ottawa.
Sir, let me tell you, when the head of the organization, and you described the importance of the mission, of which you're the head of, you described how important it is. For you to get things done, I don't imagine you need to directly instruct individual members of your team to do them. You need to identify that there's a problem, and then the team engages to solve it. That's how it works. This isn't some comment made in passing. And again, you talk about the evidence. Well, let's talk about the June 17th email from Emily Nicholson. And Ms. Nicholson says that the head of mission and staff have been instrumental throughout this process, with the head of mission, that's you, providing the green light for the selection of the new residents. Now, we know that once this scandal ended up in front of a parliamentary committee, that damage control was engaged, and Ms. Nicholson swallowed herself whole, saying that you had nothing to do with it. Well, I imagine when she was trying to save her job, that's exactly what she would say. But there are now multiple data points that didn't come from admissions from you or your staff, but came from accessed information demands and document production orders from this committee that revealed that you were involved, that your champagne tastes weren't being met with the recently modified shared representational space at the mission, nor with the multi-million-dollar condo on Billionaires Row. With my last 30 seconds, sir, we know that you're not going to resign for having bought a $9 million condo on Billionaires Row and having personally initiated that process. Will you resign for lying to a parliamentary committee?
Mr. Chair, what the evidence I have given to this committee consistently is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Too bad the facts don't back that up.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now go to Mr. Jawari for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back, Mr. Tom Clark, and thank you for making yourself available. The Member of Parliament who our colleague MP Barrett was quoting was me, and I'm going to go back to the same line of questioning that I had very shortly, and I want to pivot to something a lot more important. So given the fact that you are now agreed to be under oath, I'm going to pose to you the same question that I posed last time you were here. And I'm going to probably edit it a bit, but Mr. Clark, did at any time you exert influence in the purchase of the new building and the divestment of the old building?
No, I did not.
Did you at any time shown any interest in or a desire, let me reword, did you show at any time the desire to move from the old building into the new building for a personal reason?
No, I did not.
Okay. I'm not sure how to else ask the question. Did the Prime Minister at any time, did you have a conversation with the Prime Minister to say, hey, look, it's time for me to move?
I never had a conversation with the Prime Minister about the old residents or the new residents at any time.
Included in the report that we are hoping to publish very soon. I want to go back to another line of questioning. About 2 weeks ago, we had an election in U.S., and as you clearly indicated in your opening remarks, $6 trillion of trade, twice the GDP of Canada, $200 billion of trade coming just from your office, and that's almost 50% of our government budget, if you want to put it into perspective for Canadians, twice the GDP of Canada, and 50% of the government's budget is something that you're managing. Can you tell me what you've been doing for the past 2 weeks as a result of this change to get ready?
My team and myself have been extremely busy, as you can imagine. This week alone, I was on a 2.5-day outreach trip into Pennsylvania, which took me to Erie, which took me to Pittsburgh, multiple meetings in both places. Right after this testimony, I'm off to Philadelphia for more meetings and giving a speech tonight in Philadelphia. Our object right now is to talk to as many people as we possibly can in the United States, fulfilling our mandate here of promoting and protecting Canadian interests in the United States. And to give everybody an idea of the 5 states that I'm responsible for, in 4 of those states, 4 of the biggest states, Canada is the #1 customer of all those states, far and above, beyond any other customers around the world. That is the level of importance that Canada has in this region, and that is what we are continuing to promote and to protect.
Thank you. How closely are you working with the committee that the committee of the ministers, that the cabinet ministers, that the Prime Minister has put together? How closely are you working with them vis-a-vis your jurisdiction?
So what I do is I feed information and analysis and intelligence through a system. So I don't deal directly with the committee, but I deal with our ambassador in Washington. I deal with global affairs in Ottawa, in what we call the NGM. And it is my job to provide advice to the government, but through the structures that are in place. So I don't directly talk to the cabinet committee. Nor have I. I don't talk to cabinet, but I do feed information.
I'm sure our G7 partners are also preparing for this transition within 2 months, and I'm sure there are a lot of conversation going among consul generals. Can you share some light around the dynamic and the level of engagement Canada has as a key player within the G7?
Yeah, we have probably one of the most dynamic missions in New York. This is the only area that I can really talk about because it's one I know. We're the largest here in New York because of the size of our relationship with the United States. And I think, as I've stated previously, we have many friends around the world in many different organizations, but here in New York, friends they may be, but they're also competitors. And so there is a friendly competition, if you want. Obviously, a place like New York is where Canadian companies would find investment money, find the ability to grow, to create more jobs. And so we see it as our job, both at the federal level and provincial level and even the municipal level, to help Canadians at whatever level they're trying to engage New York on.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go to Mrs. Vignola now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Clark, for being with us again. I have a few short questions very quickly. When you came before the committee, and I reread the testimony, you said continually that you were not involved in the decision-making process. So my question is as follows. do you make a distinction between being involved in a decision-making process and expressing an opinion? I like French very well, but just to be more clear, I will speak in my mother tongue.
I don't make the distinction on a operational basis. In other words, the decisions that are made by divisions in Global Affairs Canada, I have nothing to do with when it comes to the property. In terms of comments that are made, casual comments that are made about whether it be the office, whether it be the residence, I don't see a connection between those two. And certainly, they were never, ever intended to try and sway anything. And Madame, I just want to repeat very, very quickly, at no time did I ask that we change residences. And I think that's an important point.
Merci.
Thank you. We also learned in recent meetings that you visited the residence on 57th Avenue. Did you make those visits before or after the purchase agreement was signed by Global Affairs?
I made that visit after we had made the offer to buy, and I believe, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact date with me, I know that the official signature to buy the property was made in June. I had one visit to the property after we had made the offer to buy. So between those 2 points is where I first saw the residence.
Merci beaucoup.
Thanks very much. So your visit, even though if you said that that residence was not appropriate, it was the offer had already been signed and the decision made.
The offer had been signed. The offer had been made. That is correct. The signature to finalize the purchase came later.
So when you visited after the offer to buy was signed, if you had said, no, this is not an appropriate place, that wouldn't have changed anything. Is that correct?
That is correct. It wouldn't have changed a thing.
Merci.
Thank you. We also have learned that the average that there was a $1.6 million average for purchases, and that would be for a studio, a bachelor apartment. And obviously, a consul general could live there with if there was no family, no children, and so on. But is that something that could have been a possibility, and would that be adequate in the longer term, 60 years from now, for example? Could you see a small apartment being appropriate in the longer term to do business in New York?
No, I don't, and let me explain why. Once again, as I said, we're in a competitive environment here. This residence for the Consul General is a working residence. So it's part of what we do in terms of whether we have dinners, whether we have meetings, seminars, receptions, all sorts of things. And if you take a look at where our competitors are, such as the United Kingdom, who I think spent $26 million American on their residence. I think the Italians spent $35 million on theirs. And I'm talking American dollars, and in American dollars, we spent $6.5 million. So you can see already we are much smaller, much more compact, and maybe more efficient than our competitors are. But small
Merci, Monsieur Clark.
Thank you. I have one last question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just have a little time. So you said that you shared an opinion just with another member of your colleague, so what is how is the space divided between family and official use?
Answer, please.
The family space is very small. The official space is very big. That's as briefly as I can put it.
Thanks very much. Mr. Boulris, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Clark, for being with us again today. Mr. Clark, in answer to the repeated question from this committee, you were clear in saying that, or you were asked, in fact, whether you spoke to anybody about the need to relocate. You said, no, never. So you can understand why our committee is a bit troubled, because you seem to have misled us, because there are reports that indicate that you repeatedly expressed misgivings about the former residence, saying it was inadequate, and you shared that opinion with members of your staff and say that that was just impromptu comments. So it turns out that what you said before is not true, even if you made occasional opinions and you didn't mean them to be interpreted as directives. Why did you say to the committee that you didn't talk to anyone about relocating?
Well, Mr. Chair, I did not talk to anybody about relocating. My comments, casual as they may have been, were directed towards what I had to work with at 550 Park in Unit 12E. I noted that there were problems with the furniture, for example, that made it very difficult for people with mobility or accessibility issues to use that furniture. I expressed that the family space was, and this goes a little bit further to explaining what I meant by that, there is in that apartment no designated family space other than the bedrooms. Everything else is representational. I brought this up to say, as we have heard in previous testimony from officials of global affairs, this is not an uncommon comment for incoming heads of mission to say. It is a problem with many official residences.
Je comprends votre point.
I understand your perspective, but when you say
Une réponse précédente. Je n'ai pas demandé.
You said, I did not ask to have relocation, but you can understand that if you say to staff that the space isn't appropriate, the furniture isn't appropriate, it is inaccessible, and so on, and it isn't good for family space, that could easily be interpreted as a desire to relocate.
Mr. Chair, I want to repeat again that the process for relocating an official residence is not in the hands of the local head of mission nor the staff of the mission in New York. It is entirely in the hands of the property division in Ottawa.
Question de mon collègue, Monsieur Jouari.
Mr. Jouari, my colleague, asked the question as to whether you ever spoke to this of this to anyone. You can understand that we as a committee are feeling that we've been misled.
Mr. Chair, I can assure the member that everything that I have said is, and it is now, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The decision to buy and sell the residences was taken by Ottawa. I had no role in that. I did not exert any influence, nor did I have the ability to exert any influence.
Dans ce cas-là, Monsieur Clark.
In that case, Mr. Clark, would you say that the new residence that has been purchased meets the criteria that you felt were important?
Global Affairs Canada informs me that the new residence meets all the criteria that they have.
Vous êtes davantage satisfait de la nouvelle.
So are you happier with the new residence than with the former one?
Mr. Chair, you'll understand it's not a question of my happiness. It wasn't a question of my unhappiness or my happiness. I go where I am told to go. Global Affairs has decided that a process took place, that they wanted to move the residents. That's where I'm going.
Il reste combien de temps?
How much time do I have left? A minute. When we talk about the tools needed by the Consul General, to what extent is this residence a fundamental tool for your work?
That's a good question. I find it very helpful for the type of work that I do. Very often we convene, for example, dinners on particular subjects. We have access to some of the top brains in the United States, and we put them together with Canadians, with Quebecers, with people from other provinces. And it is a way of us finding a way in this very noisy environment in New York to be relevant to the conversation in North America. So it's a very important tool for me.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Brock, please, for 5 minutes.
Tom Clark, at your last appearance, you were emphatic when you stated you had nothing to do with the decision to sell the old official residence. You had nothing to do with the decision to buy the new official residence. You had nothing to do with deciding on its amenities or its location. So let's cut to the chase. Since 2014, plans to repair the old luxurious official residence on Park Ave were ongoing and repairs commenced. No other prior head of mission demanded an immediate replacement. On February 23, 2023, your buddy Justin Trudeau appoints you head of mission in New York City. On April the 27th, same year, just a few months later, you host a reception for your buddy. You post a video to social media of the two of you in a limousine. In and around the same time, you and your office inform GAC officials, pursuant to an ATIP, that the property is not suitable for representational activities, it's not suitable as a residence, and I'm going to highlight this, requires immediate replacement. I have it right here, ATIP, black and white, Tom Clark. No other head of mission to New York City had issued that directive before other than you, Tom Clark. We also have the infamous email dated June 17, 2024 from Emily Nicholson. States both CNGNY and HOM, that's you, Tom Clark, and staff have been instrumental throughout the process, with the head of mission, you, Tom Clark, providing the green light for the selection of the new residence. After your lies were exposed, you wrote to this committee. You tried to explain that your comments to officials were made in passing. Well, Tom Clark, that's another lie. Comments made in passing might include, how's the weather? How was your weekend? I guess my appearance at committee is not going very well today, but those are passing comments. You issued a mandated direction to your staff that was communicated to GAC officials that the official residence on Park Avenue needed an immediate replacement. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Chair, I feel I've got to correct the record here. Let me start by saying there was never a directive or a mandate from me to my staff whatsoever.
Let's talk about who in your office you spoke with, because I'm also looking at an article from the National Post. You indicate, and you're quoted, I also observed the issues between family and representational spaces. I shared these views with Consulate General Administration. So who in administration did you communicate with? Names, please, and positions.
When I first saw the residents...
Names, please. Names.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, when I first saw the residents, I was in the company
Clark, it's a direct question. Who are the officials in your office that you spoke with and raised these concerns? Give me names, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to tell you that I am trying to say that when I arrived in New York and I saw the residents for the first time, I was
The
met by
history, Mr.
MCO.
Clark. Just give me the names of the officials in your office you spoke with. It is not a difficult question. For the third time, give me names.
Mr. Chair, for the third time, I will say that when I made those comments, I was in the residence. I was not in the office. The people in the residence were the ones greeting me at the time. One was our MCO, who was Mario Bott. And quite frankly, I can't remember who else were there. I think there were about 3 or 4 other people, mainly from the property section of New York.
Table all the names of the individuals you spoke with, where you highlighted deficiencies in the official residence, whether in the residence itself, the staff, and your staff at your office in Manhattan. Will you table those names and those positions, including their email addresses, to this committee, yes or no?
Well, Mr. Chair, I will do my very best to try and remember who
You
was
also
in that meeting.
indicate that the comment you made about immediate replacement was made in passing to a colleague and reported to Consulate General at Global Affairs. Who was that colleague?
Mr. Chair, I never made that comment.
You're quoted in the National Post, so you can take that up with the National Post. Now, it's very clear that GAC officials earlier this week confirmed how important your mission is. You, as head of mission, are the most important official in that residence, and what you say carries great weight. So, Tom, you influenced your staff because you indicated to your staff that your champagne tastes were not suitable anymore for Park Avenue, and you needed that wonderful Central Park view on Billionaires Row. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Chair, everything that is said is inaccurate.
Thank you. That's our time. We'll go to Mr. Baines now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Consul General Clark for once again joining our committee to, clarify and answer these questions. Mr. Clark, my hometown is Richmond, British Columbia, and it's the cornerstone of this city is the fishing industry. In Steveston, we have the largest commercial fishing harbor in Canada, which offloads approximately 100 million pounds of seafood, fish annually, and we just recently established the harbor recently established in another new business offloading another 4 million pounds of crab, Dungeness crab, and a new processing plant has been set up there. Yeah, I'm curious about our seafood and fish trade on the eastern seaboard there. You know, how if you can maybe talk a little bit about that industry, that sector, and the impacts that may have on the trade between the states that you've recognized earlier today, on with that amounted to the $325 billion trade you talked about.
Agriculture and aquaculture are big industries, and it is being recognized as such in the investment community here in the United States, and frankly also in the restaurant industry here in New York. And, you know, there's thousands of restaurants here. We have hosted, for example, Prince Edward Island. The Premier of Prince Edward Island came down with a delegation, and we helped them make contact with both food distributors and restaurants here in New York. It was a very successful trade mission. We've also done the same, for example, and this is a little outside of the fishery industry, but we have hosted Ontario wines and Quebec wines and Nova Scotia wines here in New York as a way of connecting them to the larger ecosystem, both financially and in terms of the hospitality industry in New York. So I would simply agree with you, sir, that this is a very big and important business for Canada down here.
Yeah, it amounts to about $200 million of economic impact just in our region here in the Lower Mainland in British Columbia. So I was just curious to see how much of an impact that may have on those eastern states. With respect to, you talked a little bit about competitiveness. Maybe if you can talk to us about the official residence there in New York, and we know now we have a new administration coming in where many of the our allied nations, G7 nations, will need to establish newer relationships as we see new members of the new administration are being appointed. Many who may not have pre-established relationships with some of these nations, we need to find our way and make sure that we remain competitive. We are at the forefront at some of these discussions. So maybe if you can talk about what will there be more activity all of a sudden at this residence, and maybe take your time, explain, please.
Yeah, I think that all of our diplomatic tools are now going to be used more than they've ever been used before. We're engaging with the new administration. We're engaging with, as I said at the beginning, with as many Americans, both inside and outside the political process as we possibly can. Forgive me. We are at a point where to defend and protect and promote Canada's interests in the United States means all hands on deck. We have a story to tell. We've got interest to protect. We want to promote Canadian business, as you were just talking about with the Lower Mainland and the fishing industry that exists there. And as with any new administration coming in, there are new players, there are new ideas, there are new thoughts, and we want to intersect with all of those. And in the process of doing that, tell Canada's story. To go directly to the question you're asking about the use of the official residence, this is really Canada's house in New York. This is where people come from all walks of life in New York, and they walk into Canada's house. It is there that we exchange ideas, where we tell our story, where we promote ourselves as true allies, friends, and partners in North America, promoting the North American vision of what we are and who we want to be collectively. I envisage that new residence.
I'm afraid we're well past our time, Mr. Clark. Thanks very much, Mr. Baines, Mr. Clark. We'll go to Mrs. Vignola, but before we start, there's a fair amount of noise in the room. If everyone can keep it down, please. Mrs. Vignola, the floor is yours for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. From what I understand, Mr. Clark, you made a comment to the effect that, well, rather you wanted it to be informal and you weren't intending for it to reach global affairs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
OK. À ce moment-là,
that being the case, I have a question for you, and I just have a couple of minutes left. So my question is, how could it be avoided in the future, this kind of situation where we're all dealing now with this event? What advice should be given to consuls general, to the staff at Global Affairs, so that there is a very clear distinction between an informal opinion that is not at all intended to influence a decision or a process, and something that is? Do you have any recommendations in that regard?
It's a very good question. I think that I would answer it this way, briefly, that the process needs to remain the process. I think that anybody coming into a new residence, you can't prevent somebody saying, wow, this is nice, or wow, this is bad. But I think that there has to be an understanding on the part of everybody, as there is now and as there was here in New York, that the process is entirely in the hands of Ottawa. I don't think it would befit any head of mission to walk in and ask for a new residence. I can't imagine anybody would do that. I certainly didn't do that. But I think that to your point, Madame, that perhaps Homs should be told the obvious, and that is don't interfere with with the decisions that are properly being made elsewhere.
Thank you very much. That's our time. Mr. Boulerice, please.
Oui, Monsieur Clark.
Mr. Clark, I am pleased to have you here today because I want to ask you a question about something that is of great concern to Canadians and Quebecers, and that is the arrival of the new Trump administration, and there have been very clear indications about protectionism, the imposition of tariffs, the conditions for renegotiating the U.S., Mexico, and Canadian Accord, the CUSMA, and I just wondered what you are doing in that regard.
What we are doing is talking to as many people as we possibly can. This is a time when I think this is a wonderful occasion for education. And what I find, quite frankly, when I'm dealing with issues here in the United States, so often we're pushing against an open door. There's not real resistance to dealing with Canada. It is a matter of educating people about who we are, what we bring to the table. I work closely, for example, with the Délégué Général du Québec ici à New York. We work collaboratively in terms of advancing both Canadian and Quebec interests here in New York. So on all the above questions that you asked, I think that the answer is that we need engagement, we need to talk, and we need to tell the Canadian story.
Peut-être en terminant, les États-Unis.
Well, just in conclusion, the U.S. is a federal state and the federal government has a strong role, but I would like to hear from you about the role of the states in our trade relations with our partners in the U.S.
Great question. Extremely important. As I said earlier, 4 of my 5 states, we are the #1 customer in all those states by a wide margin. When you take a look at the central issue of energy, for example, Hydro-Québec is building a line into New York City that within a year and a half is going to provide 20% of the electrical needs of New York City. That's enormous, and that's coming from Quebec. And that is a real, excuse the expression, connector between the two places. So when you deal at the state level and at the county level, you're dealing with very important on-the-ground decisions that really mean something to people. And that is, that's very satisfying for me.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
And we'll go to Mrs. Block, and then we'll finish with Mr. Sousa. Mrs. Block, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Clark, for joining us today. It would appear that your testimony today is consistent with that you made at your first appearance here at committee, in which you continue to deny having any involvement in the purchase process for the new official residence, and that you made no direct complaints about the state of the current residence. Is that correct?
I made no direct complaint to the process. That is correct.
To the process, I'll note that. So to be clear, in response to my colleagues' questions, you testified that it was upon your arrival to the most important mission that Canada has, the first comments you made to those welcoming you were to express concerns about the residence that you were in fact going to be living in. And I'll refer back to the ATIP. I won't quote it because my colleague already did that. But the first comments you made to those welcoming you were to express concerns regarding the completion of the renovation and the refurbishment project. You indicated it was not suitable to be the Consul General's accommodations and that it did not have a floor plan that was ideal for representational activities. You go on. You went on to say, and you've testified again today, that somehow there is absolutely no connection to making these comments that were made to those greeting you, that there is absolutely no connection to the actions that took place and the decisions that were made following that. You know, while you refuse to see the connection, I think your staff certainly understood the mission. They understood what they were hearing, and they absolutely understood that you were not happy with the accommodations. You were making those observations right off the get-go, and that they needed to do something about that. You've also stated time and time again that you did not ever talk to anyone about this, and yet in your own letter, and you refused to admit that these comments were made to a colleague, and you said you didn't say that. It's in your letter. Did you write the letter that was sent to this committee?
Mr. Chair, I did.
So in this letter, you said, I was not aware until media reports this week that this comment made in passing to a colleague had been reported by the Consulate General. So my colleague had asked who that colleague was, and you said, I didn't make these comments to a colleague. Which is it? Did you speak to a colleague or did you not?
Mr. Chair, I did, but perhaps just for precision, could you ask me what comments you're referring to? Because if the comments you're referring to are me saying we need a new residence, that simply is not true.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to interrupt you there, Mr. Clark, because this letter that you sent was all about the issue of the kind of influence that you may have exerted over the purchase of this condominium. And so if you want to try and distract and confuse, I'm just going to use the time that I have to keep us on task here. We have received emails and official documents that indicated you were instrumental in getting the ball rolling on the purchase of the new residence. That's why you hurriedly wrote this letter, to say that the comments that were made were only made in passing. And I think we've already debunked that theory that you were only making comments in passing, especially since they were comments made upon your arrival. We also have the official report from Global Affairs Canada. So you see, Mr. Clark, the issue that we are facing here is that you have obviously and shamelessly lied to this committee on multiple occasions. And so my question for you right now is, why don't you just come clean with this committee and Canadians, admit you've lied, follow in Randy Boissonneau's footsteps, and resign?
Indeed. Good job, Kelly.
You have 20 seconds, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Chair, I would just say once again, and I am under oath, I can tell you that everything I have said is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
It's the remaining seconds I have to my colleague.
Thank you. Given this testimony, I'm looking for unanimous consent, then, Chair, to call Mr. Mario Bott, Mr. Christopher Vistra, and the author of the International Platform Report, Ms. Christy Vliet. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
No.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Clark, thanks for being here, and I just wanted to verify a couple of things. I'm just going to reset my time so I can monitor this. A lot of allegations are being made against you. A lot of people are trying to accuse you of lying. And a lot of others are trying to misinform the issue.
Sorry, I'm going to stop the clock. We have interpretation issue. Hold on, Mr. Sousa. Okay. Is this working? Go ahead, Charles.
I'll reset. So, Mr. Clark, do you have anything to gain by the purchase and sale of this property?
Mr. Chair, this property was not bought for me. It was bought for Canada. It will be the residence of consuls generals for many decades to come. It was not bought for me. What else can I say?
Mr. Clark, the former consul generals before you, have they not related and conveyed the status of the former residence to other officials about its state of affairs?
Yes, going back to at least 2014.
I have had the opportunity to use that residence on many occasions in the past with conservative appointed consul generals who complained about the status of that residence in order to accommodate receptions and do the official functions, as well as recognize that there was a need for improvement. Did you feel that when you first moved in?
I think what I felt when I moved in was, number one, I didn't accept this commission on behalf of Canada because of the accommodation. I went where I was told to go. I made casual comments about the usefulness of it. I never, ever said that we should sell it, we should move on, we should do anything other than just a normal casual observation when you walk into a new place and you see what it is, especially after you've used it for a couple of times.
So Mr. Clark, I guess my point being, as the tenant of the resident, it's appropriate to discuss the status of the property in order to accommodate the use of that property for yourself and your staff. I think members in the opposition do that all the time with their offices and their residences, right, and their appropriations of allocation of those resources. At the same time, Mr. Clark, when you have those discussions, is it appropriate as the tenant to share them?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what would be wrong with that. Again, it's outside of a process. It has nothing to do with the process of looking at buying or selling residences. It's simply where you end up and what you see.
So, Mr. Clark, I'm going to just ask these questions again. Did you have influence in making the decision to sell or buy?
No.
Did you actually approve any decisions to sell or buy?
No.
Did you have discussions with elected officials or the senior management of the process to determine the sale or the buy?
No.
Are you aware that a number of properties were reviewed in order to make that decision?
Yes.
Did you visit all the locations that were being assessed?
No.
In regards to the residence that is there now, is it now up for sale?
It is.
Do you know how much or what approximate value would be netted to the taxpayer?
Again, I'm not part of that process. My understanding is it's about $13 million, but I think previous testimony has covered that.
It certainly has. And the property that you're now being forced to move into, frankly, is it less expensive than the one you're in now or that you were in previously?
It is my understanding that this will save millions of dollars.
Approximately $7 million in the net sale and buy, and something like $115,000 a year just in savings. Is that that's what we're told, Mr. Clark? And that's a substantive improvement and benefit to Canadians and taxpayers. Would you agree?
I would think that's a good thing, yes.
Are you able to continue with your role in the new residence because it's a prominent position and certainly is required by other provinces, other premiers, other members of governments throughout Canada? Is it a more accessible location, a more effective use of government use of space?
Yes, Canada is open for business on West 57th.
And I am told that I have to wrap up. Mr. Clark, thank you for your service and your time, and I appreciate you doing the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Sousa, thank you very much. Mr. Clark, thank you for being with us again. Colleagues, we're going to suspend for a few minutes to excuse Mr. Clark and set up for our next panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
afternoon. We are back in session. I'd like to welcome our guests for this part. I understand there'll be opening statements from Heritage Canada. Who will be doing it? Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes, please.
Parfait. Alors, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, good afternoon. I would first like to acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. I am here today in response to the invitation to the Deputy Minister of Canadian Heritage. I'm replacing her, and I'm accompanied by Karsten Quell, who is the Executive Director, and Annie Proulx, the Director of Regulations and Policies. Both of them are from the Official Languages Center of Excellence under the Secretariat Office of the Chief Official Human Resources Officer. And I'm speaking as the Director General of Official Languages. As you know, the Department of Canadian Heritage has a number of responsibilities with respect to official languages. As Director General, I provide my best advice to the Assistant Deputy Minister for Official Languages and to the Deputy Minister as the Deputy Head of the Department. We have as a responsibility, among other things, to make sure that Canadian Heritage's work environment favors the use of both official languages. And the mandate of the Deputy Minister is also to support ministers whose portfolio comes under Canadian Heritage. For example, she supports the Minister of Official Languages by offering professional advice that is nonpartisan to develop and implement policies. But I would add that the change in linguistic status of 24 additional post offices in the Greater Montreal region is not part of our responsibilities, and therefore that will be addressed to the Treasury Board Secretariat. I will be pleased, and it is my duty to answer any questions you may have on our responsibilities.
Thank you. Mr. Quell, do you have an opening statement? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today before this committee. Aujourd'hui, dans mes brèves remarques, j'aimerais fournir...
Today, in my brief remarks, I will provide information about the designation in Quebec. Both our official languages are part of our Canadian traditions, and they are priorities for the Government of Canada to protect French across Canada. If I may, I would like to provide a little historical context. In 2016, the Government of Canada committed to ensuring that more people who speak the minority official language, that is French-speaking people outside Quebec and English-speaking people in Quebec, could obtain federal services in their language anywhere in the country. This decision led to the launch of the revision of the official languages, communications with and services to the public regulations.
Circumstances under which federal offices, including a post office, are required to offer their services in English, French, or in both official languages, by determining whether or not there is significant demand in the minority official language. And I should add here that the right to receive these services is protected under Section 20 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And it is the Charter which establishes the concept of significant demand. As part of this revision of the regulations, the Treasury Board Secretariat conducted extensive consultations across the country, including with official language minority communities and with the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages. These consultations inspired the regulatory amendments that were tabled in both Houses of Parliament in October 2018 and published in the Canada Gazette Part 1 shortly thereafter, to give the public and all stakeholders the chance to review and comment. Le règlement modifié a été...
The amended regulations were adopted on June 25, 2019, and include several amendments in response to stakeholder requests. For example, It uses a more inclusive calculation method to estimate significant demand in the minority official language that considers all those who use the minority official language at home. The amended regulations also recognize that the existence of an official language minority school is a stable indicator of community vitality and significant demand for minority language services in the region where the school is located.
Offices will always offer service in the majority language of the province or territory in which they are located, and will always offer service in the majority language first. In Quebec, service in federal offices will therefore always be offered first in French. Let me take you now to today. Most of the amendments of the regulations are in the process of being implemented as part of the Official Languages Regulations reapplication exercise. We call it the OLRE. The OLRE is an exercise coordinated by TBS during which some 180 federal institutions reapply the regulations to update the linguistic designation of some 10,000 federal offices located in Quebec and across Canada. This reapplication of the regulations is based on data from the 2021 census. Grâce au règlement modifié,
thanks to the amended regulations, more Canadians will be able to obtain federal services in French across the country. In accordance with Treasury Board policies, in a bilingual Quebec office, such as a post office, staff must greet and communicate with customers in French first. I will stop here. My colleague and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quell. Mr. Godin, welcome back to OGO. The floor is yours for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci d'être présent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here with us. Something that is clear is that the situation in Quebec is special because it's the only province in which the common language is French. I'll just speak in English so you can understand me. Canada Post, after the 2021 census, took the step of launching consultations. We had an exercise in 2021 that the government has said it will not go ahead with the next time, but there was a survey that was launched. So I would like to know which has the priority. And I don't know who to ask my question of, because Canadian Heritage is saying that this isn't under its jurisdiction. Is it up to the Treasury Board Secretariat? Is it under Public Works and Public Services? But we think that Canadian Heritage should be responsible for official languages, but that wasn't done under the Act. So I look forward to your answer. Thank you for that question. Canada Post follows the process that is outlined in the regulations. That is, on the basis of the new data from the most recent census in 2021, it determines the number of people who belong to a minority language group. So that is a new type of calculation, new method. When did that start? 2019. Okay, thank you. So under the old regulations, that was the case, but there's going to be a new system? No. The regulations that are currently being developed deal with Part 7, that is minority language groups, and the... I'm just going to stop you there. I don't want to talk about monetary sanctions because there is no order in council that has been issued. No, my intention is just to say that there are regulations of various sorts being developed right now. There are the 2019 regulations that won't be changed until 2029. So Canada Post takes the data from the census and looks at its network of post offices in Montreal. Then the requirement is that the number of post offices providing bilingual service has to be proportional to the number of minority language speakers. Okay, I'm going just to interrupt you. So there has been an increase in the number of Anglophones since the last sentence, because the 2021 census shows that there is a decline in French, so there are fewer Francophones in Montreal. Is that something we can conclude? I want to clarify how this new method of calculating things works. We need to... No, I just want to talk about Quebec. The calculation method used now, it takes into account everyone who uses a minority language regularly at home, that those people should have access to service in their language. Okay, thank you. Does this new calculation method promote the use of French in Quebec? The new, yes or no? According to your expertise. No, I can't really say what promotes or doesn't promote French. Well, in 2011, there was a census and then another one in 2021 in Quebec. And if Canada Post is doing its work properly, it shows that French has declined in Quebec. What Canada Post is doing is to applying the regulations, but there's been a new calculation method introduced. So my question is whether the new calculation method actually promotes the use of French. So you have to understand, French is declining across Canada, and in the only province where French is the common language, they have taken these steps. So is the government taking steps to protect both official languages? We don't want to confront French and English, but the general common language in Quebec is French. So is what Canada Post is doing helping to protect French in Quebec?
Time for a response, but perhaps you can respond in the next round or the next intervention. I have Mr. Kuzmierczak, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to Mr. Quell for his testimony here today. I wanted to just ask you if you'd be able to explain for us sort of the main reasons behind Canada Post's decision to convert 24 post offices from unilingual to bilingual services, and how does this align with the Modernized Official Languages Act?
Mr. Chair, the alignment with the Official Languages Act can be explained quite simply. The regulations were made in 2019, so that was before the new Official Languages Act was adopted in 2023. What Canada Post is doing, like any other federal institution subject to the regulation, is to apply the regulations. When the regulations, the objective of the regulations when they were adopted was to increase the offer of service in both official languages across the country. And we estimate that currently we will move from 34% bilingual offices across the country to about 40% with the application of the regulations. The desire was specifically strong among Francophone minority communities who wish to see that for example, that in the area around a Service Canada Centre, when there was a school in that area, that school would be considered a factor of the vitality of the community, which would then trigger that Service Canada office, for example, to have to offer services in both official languages. As I said in my opening remarks, any federal office will always offer its services first in the language of the majority of the province or territory. So the action on the part of the government seeks to enhance the offer of services and allow more Canadians to use services either in English or in French. But the fact that a bilingual office is not an office that is less English or less French because of its bilingual designation.
Thank you for that. And if you can confirm, because you mentioned moving from 34% to 40% in terms of the percentage of bilingual federal points of service. My understanding is that this will result in the creation of about 700 new bilingual offices across Canada, and it's going to actually provide bilingual services for 145,000 more Canadians. Just from, again, Service Canada offices, so that, again, Canadians can access services in their official language of choice. Do those numbers jive with what you know?
Yes, the numbers that were mentioned are based on simulations that the Treasury Board Secretariat undertook before the regulations were adopted. We will have to wait to see what the final numbers are, but the number of 700 is correct, and the number of 154,000 more Canadians that will be able to access the services of Service Canada after the regulations are fully implemented. Those numbers are correct.
So I'm wondering if you might be able to also provide us examples of other federal institutions, but looking at English-speaking provinces that have converted to bilingual and some of the impacts that has had. So can you maybe provide us with examples from other areas?
Certainly, the impact is one that will be felt across the country. And so more French-speaking Canadians in the minority situation will be able to have postal services in the minority language, but this will also apply to other institutions like Service Canada, like the RCMP, and maybe I'll invite my colleague Annie, who's responsible for the implementation of the regulations, to give some examples.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This will be spread across the country. In terms of specific examples, we can think of the key services. Business development agencies are also to be added to the list of examples provided by Mr. Quell. Thank you.
If you could provide that in correspondence, just examples to the committee, just concrete examples where we can see those bilingual services providing services to Francophone communities across Canada. Just some, again, telling, illustrative examples would be fantastic if that's possible. I wanted to ask you about the consultation process, and I think we're going to be short on time here, but can you talk a little bit about the consultation process that took place before these changes were introduced?
When an institution such as Canada Post has several offices offering the same type of service in one particular region, as a general rule, the regulations stipulate that it must offer bilingual services in a number of offices equal or to or greater than the percentage of the minority population region. So Canada Post proceeded with this survey to establish where those offices would be designated bilingual.
Thanks very much. We'll go to Mrs. Vignola for 6, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here with us. I will start with Canadian Heritage, Ms. Boily. Your internet site indicates that under the legislation on the use of French, then Canadian Heritage is the head organization, and consumers have the right to communicate in French with federally regulated businesses in Quebec, and that employees or those seeking employment have the right to submit documentation and receive it in French for those organizations. So there is an official status for French. In North America, it is only 8 million out of 340 million, so it's definitely a small minority. If we say 7,800,000 francophones in Canada, we can include some in the Atlantic, of course, but it's about 7,800,000, 7.8 million out of our population. But if we say that in Quebec, the minority language is English, I have a hard time finding a radio station in French and often even getting served in French in Montreal. In Toronto, bilingual offices account for 1.9% of all of the offices, but there and we understand that the Francophone population is 1.9%, and we understand how that's calculated. But in Montreal, when we add the 24 new bilingual offices, we get to 31% of offices that are bilingual in order to help Anglophones, and 27% of residents are Anglophone. So the proportionality favors Anglophones in Montreal. It is higher than their actual proportion. So do you see a problem with how the legislation is being implemented? Because Francophones outside Quebec are getting less service than Anglophones in Quebec under the Act. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you, I want to say thank you for the question, and I will repeat that everything to do with the decisions on the service and how it is implemented is really under the Treasury Board Secretary, but I can talk about Canadian Heritage's role in promoting and protecting French. My question is really about the disparity in the service levels. So I will continue. In 2021, there was a mandate letter, and I don't think there's been any since, talking about eliminating any systemic disparities in the spirit of inclusion and taking into account the various views of Canadians, of women, Indigenous people, racialized Canadian, new immigrant, religious communities, the people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus people. What is missing? Mr. Chairman, you have listed the equity groups that are used in government services, but I think that Francophones should be considered as a minority group in Canada. And I think that this is a flagrant indication of disparity and systemic discrimination because they are not included. You can't even say that in Canada, Francophones form a minority, and they are not in the list of groups for special consideration in the mandate letter. Even though Francophones are clearly a minority group and they are one of our founding populations, along with the indigenous people who came much earlier than us, but Francophones were here 150 years before Anglophones. So it's not even in the mandate letter. How can Canadian heritage in the long run really protect French when Francophones aren't even mentioned?
For a quick one, otherwise we'll get back to the next round.
J'allais simplement mentionner.
I was just going to mention that in the mandate letter from 2021, that's one thing, but we have the new Official Languages Act adopted in 2023 that deals with official languages, including in Quebec. So I think that can provide some hope for increased recognition.
Thank you. Mr. Boulris, please, for 6.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been a member of Parliament for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie for the last 13 years, and in Montreal, and I certainly know that we can get service in French every day. There can be difficulties, but it is extremely rare. But the overall situation for French in Montreal, Quebec, and across the country is fragile and sometimes threatened. And this has been recognized. We have to continually be vigilant and to protect the French fact and promote French. And on August 19th, we learned from the Journal de Montréal that the Canada Post had reviewed its service and was adding 24 bilingual post offices, and people saw that as a decline in the service to Francophones, in particular in the Greater Montreal region. And it appears that the decision was made on the basis of the 2021 system. We know that we have the 71% of people who speak French, 20% English, and 6.7% speak both. So this is something that is the case in Montreal. But the percentage of the post offices has increased from 20 to 27%. But as I said, there are 20% of Anglophones, but now there are 31% of post offices that are bilingual. If there are another 6.7% of people who are bilingual, then we are up to 27%. But this 7% of bilingual people don't really need bilingual post offices because they are able to communicate in and understand French. Why do we have 20% of people who are Anglophone in Montreal and 31% of Canadian post offices that are bilingual? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will begin by saying that the federal government policy is to provide services to Canadians in the language of their choice, regardless of their status as to whether they are bilingual or not. So someone who is bilingual should not receive lesser service because they are bilingual. They can choose the language in which they want to be served. Now, you raised the question as to why there is an increased number of people who would have access to service in the language of their choice. We changed the method to ensure that we captured those across Canada who use the minority language at home. So if a francophone outside Quebec is in that situation, they may want to be served in French. Offices that operate in both official languages don't have more of a mandate to provide service in French or in English, and that's how the Treasury Board Secretariat made the decision. I understand that under this new calculation method, minority language communities that are francophone outside Quebec will benefit, but it is not the case in Montreal because Quebec French language is less protected, and it creates an asymmetrical situation with respect to French and English service across Canada. So why not take that into account? It is recognized under the legislation, and things should be done differently in Quebec. Mr. Chairman, I would answer by saying that when the regulations were issued, there had already been extensive consultation, and there had been debate in Parliament. We are now implementing those regulations. How much time do I have left, Mr. Chairman?
Them to you.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll now go to Mrs. Goosey for 5, and what we're going to do is we'll do 5 for Mr. Jouari, and then instead of a 2.5 round, we'll finish up with 5 minutes and 5 minutes for the block in the NDP. Mrs. Goosey, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will continue with the questions that were already asked by the members of the Conservative Party, because I remember that a Liberal member asked a question about the changes to add more bilingual post offices. That was a question, and I know that you gave a short answer. But the next question was about the decision made on August 19th. But that it was not clear how the results could have been made, and the decision made within 3 days after August 16th. Well, the way institutions carry out their consultations is not under my authority, but so Canada Post had latitude in applying the results of the consultations. You said that this decision was made by Canada Post. I have another question on the MEM issue. Can you provide the results of the consultations to our committee, please? Mr. Chairman, here again, it is up to federal institutions to apply the regulations, and the methods that they use for the consultations and the results, really, that's something that would have to be addressed to the institutions. Was that decision made before August 19th with respect to the bilingual post offices? Could you just repeat the question, please? Was the decision made before August 19th? And was the consultation just additional information for the change? The survey that was carried out by Canada Post was intended to consult the minority language communities to see their reaction to the idea of additional bilingual post offices. I'm going to change topic now, and I will follow up with what my colleague asked. We know that Canada Post has sometimes not required the knowledge of French. Do you think that it's appropriate that people should be able to be served in the language of their choice? Well, if I understand you correctly, I think this is a question that should be asked of Canada Post. As a general rule, federal offices that are bilingual don't require that all staff be bilingual. Rather, the services need to be offered in both official languages to the public, and the institution can take the steps they see necessary to hire and staff their offices in a way that ensures that the public has bilingual services. It was indicated at the beginning that the Official Languages Act was being implemented properly, but there is a new requirement that all offices in Quebec have the possibility to provide service in French. It seems obvious to me that it's the Treasury Board Secretariat that has jurisdiction here. Do they have authority in the area of the Official Languages Act? The Treasury Board requires federal institutions to report every 2 years, and so there is oversight. But the institutions are free to operate and to ensure the official languages service.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to officials from both departments. I want to take a little bit of a step back. So did Canada Post take this initiative on their own, or were they kind of mandated by regulation to do that?
Canada Post was mandated to undertake the consultations in order to determine which location would best suit the community in terms of the additional offer of bilingual services.
Thank you. Where is that mandate coming from?
That's part of the official languages regulations.
Okay, and is it TBS who's driving that?
So the institutions must apply the regulations. Treasury Board Secretariat assists the institutions in applying the regulations, and we communicate with the institutions in order to publish the list of federal offices, the 10,000 federal offices, once the linguistic designation is complete.
So when you say institution, is more than Canada Post?
It's departments, agencies, crown corporations, and privatized entities such as Air Canada, for example. They all fall under the regulations.
So, great. Now, as a result of that mandate, as a result of that regulation, there is a process. There is a consultation process. One of the elements into that process is the census data, the way I understand. Okay, so aside from census data, can you tell me what other data elements goes into this consultation process? And can you give me the key steps in that process?
certainly the census data are the key demographic data that are used, but for certain services, and I'll pass it on to my colleague, the institution has to conduct special service because the demographic data, for example, when you're serving the traveling public, looking at the composition of the area around an airport or a train station doesn't really help you. You need to do a survey of the people who are actually traveling, going through the airport, in terms of determining whether they need services in one or in both languages. I'll ask Annie to complement.
So in the case of this survey, the Canada Post, namely here, established a number of post offices in a designated geographic region. And based on that number, following the regulations, now they have to consult the linguistic community, minority community, to establish the percentage relevant to the percentage of that minority community, and identify a X number of offices that will be designated bilingual. So that survey was to help, according to the regs, that's the regulations, that's part of one of the steps that they need to complete this study. That's the same thing for all institutions under that.
So, great. So I understand now the process, we understand the mandate, we understand the input, and we understand also that the augmented activities that says you need to also consult locally and you need to take some of that. So now, as a result of that, a list of postal offices, and I know there are other institutions, there's other institutions, but let's talk about post offices. So there was a list of post offices across Canada were identified that they need to be able to offer services in bilingual. Am I right to understand that?
So as part of the exercise, depending on the location, for example, let's take the example of the National Capital Region. All post offices are automatically bilingual. So nothing needs to be applied in terms of the regulations. But in other areas, they will need to take into account how many offices are there in a given service area, what is the percentage of the minority population, and then they have to say, they then move to saying, okay, a percentage of those post offices equal to or greater has to be designated bilingual. But before we as the institution go ahead and designating a particular office, we want to make sure that, for example, for Francophones in a minority context, we consult them and find out which offices it makes the most sense to be bilingual.
Okay. So I only got about 15 seconds, and I just want to ask, aside from these 24 offices in Greater Montreal area, are other regions / cities that across Canada that now are going to, as a result of this, offer bilingual services, specifically French?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Canada Post has a network of about 6,000 offices, so it applies across the country.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jory. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Mr. Quell, you've said a little earlier that the presence of an Anglophone school, an English school, shows that there is a stability for English in Quebec. What level of schooling are we talking about? We're talking about schools that teach. No, I'm talking about, is this primary, secondary, post-secondary? Primary and secondary. Okay, thank you. Are you aware that schools, those English schools, may have Francophone students who have one English or one parent who has attended school in English, or a parent whose primary language is neither English nor French? Well, I'm not very aware of the composition of English schools in Quebec. As well, 3% of Quebec City residents are Anglophone, and we have a brand new English school. And there is a lot of funding for English schools. So it can be, there can be a disproportion there. We often hear we have coast to coast to coast programs that things apply the same across the country. But when it comes to services for francophones, then it isn't coast to coast to coast. There is a difference, and as was pointed out a little earlier, French is very much a minority language in North Americas, and that is clear in the Official Languages Act and the regulations. As I said, there were debates on this in Parliament, and we have never changed our position that the regulations were acceptable because they protected francophones outside Quebec. But the majority language groups were favored overall. And do you remember what my colleague, the member for La Pointe de l'Île, argued about this? I do remember, with respect to Bill C-13, that there were remarks by the colleague mentioned by Ms. Vignola. In a bilingual post office, the staff is not required to be bilingual. And I want to make you aware of a reality in Quebec. Quebec has the highest percentage of bilingual people, especially in Montreal. And I am bilingual, my husband, and our 4 children as well. And people speak more than 2 languages in many cases. But when francophones hear that there are unilingual Anglophone employees, then usually the language of work there is English, and people out of politeness or other reasons will not seek services in French or for other reasons. And people are very upset often because they have to continually assert their right to speak French. So if there is one unilingual Anglophone employee, what will the language of work be, in your opinion? Well, I don't want to speak to a hypothetical situation, but the government of Canada is making a very strong effort to provide an active offer of service, that is to provide to the public services in the language of their choice. And it doesn't matter about the staff. And what about the staff? Are they comfortable using French? And I've seen many examples where this situation arises. Well, certainly we can talk about the language of work in the public service. In some regions of Canada, employees have the right to use their preferred language, and we are making efforts to ensure that all employees in that situation can express themselves in either language. I'll give you concrete examples. A bilingual francophone who has a bit of an accent. It doesn't bother anyone if an Anglophone has an accent in French, but if a francophone with an accent has tried a number of times to be promoted, often it is a unilingual Anglophone who will get the job by saying that he or she will learn French in the next 3 years. And in other situations, there may be technical terms that a bilingual francophone would need a little help with. And then the Francophone is told, well, maybe he or she could leave the meeting and then get a little briefing after in French. So where there is a unilingual Anglophone in the mix, then the Francophones will be forced to speak English. They have a lot of difficulty asserting their right to speak in French, and Francophone customers will also tend to speak English. So, and the opposite is not true. If you have one Anglophone or Francophone who is unilingual, that it won't work in the same way. So, this is why, as members of Parliament, we have fought this.
Thanks, Mrs. Vignola. Ms. Blaney, welcome back. Floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. It's always good to be back in Ogo. So thank you to the witnesses for being here. My question is around the preamble of the Official Languages Act. It says it recognizes the importance of remedying the decline in the demographic weight of French linguistic minority communities, including by restoring and increasing their demographic weight. So considering that preamble, can you offer reflections on the fact that the Act and its regulations treat French and English equally insofar as they are concerned, they concern the language designated of federal offices?
Mr. Chair, I will attempt a response here. So part of the question deals with the reestablishment of the demographic weight of Francophone minority communities, where the government has committed to reestablishing the proportions that existed, I believe, in 1971. And the principal lever to achieve this is, given that the demographic growth of Canada depends on immigration, is through the Francophone immigration policy. So that is the objective of the government, to ensure that Francophone minority communities see the arrival of sufficient numbers of immigrants that will integrate into their community so that over time the proportion of that community grows. Now, when it comes to federal offices, of course, the offer of services to Francophones in the minority context, including immigrants in the minority context, is a key aspect of ensuring that international immigrants will want to settle in Canada and will want to use the services that the federal government is offering them in both official languages, and in particular in French in the minority context.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm really curious about how do the consultations with minority language populations help federal institutions to fulfill their Official Language Act obligations to those communities?
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll take a moment to talk about a project that we're currently involved in, which is developing regulations on Part 7 of the Official Languages Act. This part of the Official Languages Act was substantially modified. There is a commitment both to ensuring that minority communities are supported, but also to protect and promote the French language. So as part of this work, the government and our team is reaching out to minority communities. We are developing regulatory options, and we want to make sure that the options that we're developing are sensitive to the needs of minority communities across the country.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Vignola, you had indicated you wanted a few more minutes. Is that correct?
May I? Maybe two?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Blaney.
Mr. Quill, in Francophone offices, is it required that people do not use English with English-speaking customers? The offices are required to serve the public in one language, the other language, or in both languages. So in a post office that provides service in one language, the public can't expect to receive service in the other. But legally speaking, are they banned from providing service in English? I'm not aware of such a provision. Ms. Boily? No, I'm not aware either. Because in Montreal, the official language is French, and it is the only officially francophone city in North America, which is an extraordinary thing and very unusual. However, people can work and be served in either language in Montreal. In francophone offices, post offices, people will be served in both French and English because we're that way. Quebecers will naturally do that. So why create post offices with a bilingual status? I understand how it works, but I just want to do the intellectual exercise. Where French is so important in Quebec, why is it necessary? Because people will provide that service. And why are we not taking into account the official language in Quebec when we make these decisions? I think that in Canada, our services are provided politely and taking into account people's wishes to be served in the language of their choice. And in a post office, people should expect to be served in the language that post office uses. If I put myself in the shoes of somebody who would like to be served in English, but if I am in a French-speaking Canada Post, I can't expect that because the language of work and service is French. But if I go to a bilingual post office, I have the right as a customer to be served in English. And that clarity is what we're trying to ensure. Thank you. I just wanted to point out that Quebec's unique character and culture are not being understood in Canada. That's what I understand. I'm very sorry about that, but that is what I understand.
Witnesses, thank you for being with us today. You're dismissed. Colleagues, just quickly, Tuesday 26, we're going to be hearing from the Office of the Supplier in Integrity and Compliance. Second hour, we're going to finish off, hopefully, Canada Post study, which is rather timely. Thursday is going to be, we have Liberal Bloc NDP witnesses for Indigenous procurement. December 3rd, thank you, Mr. Jouari, we have Treasury Board Minister with us. And then we're working on, PSPC. And then also timing regarding the estimates as well. So we're trying to wrap those in. Once we hear back, we will advise everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and also your flexibility in allowing a bit of extra time for others and accommodating them. It is appreciated. If you have anything quickly?
Just on ministers, like there's a couple ministers that we had asked for in relation to Indigenous procurement. Are they they're blowing us off so far? Or?
We have not heard back further from them. But
Okay.
I will follow up and will advise at the next meeting. We did have Minister Haiju. Minister Duclos was on it, but he'll be here for the estimates. I'll be blunt. I doubt we'll have them separately, but we will follow up and we'll let you know at the next meeting regarding.
Well, we'd be open to having him do 2 hours on the same day, one on each topic as well, I guess.
We will make that
Thank you.
information available to him, but we
And
will
then
do our best. and
Minister
we'll
Anna
update.
DeSangre is still.
We will update at our next
Thank you.
meeting. Thanks very much. We are adjourned.